والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Allah has shown us many things tonight. Many things. Whether we choose to open up our eyes and see them, whether we choose to reflect and ponder to digest it, or whether we choose to remain blind, to just allow the hands of time to keep moving and spinning, and we remain in a state of drunkenness, in a state of slumber, in a state of intoxication, at worst, versus in a state of just heedlessness. And things that happen in life are accidents, or it's a coincidence, or it's nothing too serious, it's nothing too major. You know, it happens. It's basic and it's simple. That's at best. At worst, a person being asleep, totally drunk, deluded, feeling, thinking, and believing the opposite of what Allah wants from him, from that which Allah shows him. That's at worst. And at best, a person is just heedless. They don't think, they don't ponder, they don't reflect. They're not digesting anything that Allah Azza wa Jalla is decreeing and ordaining upon him. So there are many things that Allah shows us, but in most cases we choose not to look, or we choose to look and misinterpret, or we choose to only barely scratch the surface and just barely wipe the film without digging deeper and thinking and pondering and reflecting. So just a few minutes ago, it was dark and it was cold. Many brothers started to become impatient. Whether they said it, whether they said it not, but you could feel the impatient energy. You could feel the embarrassment. We're sorry, Sheikh, you know, the wudu station, it's raining, it's cold, it's dark. We're going to use our phones. A few brothers made jokes. A few brothers tried to keep it cordial. But you could feel that it wasn't a comfortable situation. That you drove for 3 hours from another city, let alone the fact that we came from another continent across one of the Atlantic Ocean, but from 3 hours from one city to the next to do a lecture, and the masjid is pitch black dark. And the masjid is cold and it's damp, and this is an embarrassment. How can we do a lecture, a live stream, in which we have cell phones, in which we have on the lights? Do you want the light on you, Sheikh? Do you want the light on the table? Do you want the light put in this way? And then we made salah, we offered salat al-isha, and subhanallah, behold, the lights started to blink and flicker, and the light came back, and the heat is on, and everyone's pleased and happy, alhamdulillah, no problem and no issue. So, of course, we make jokes. We're human beings. We're all humans, and brothers are saying this and brothers are saying that. And I said, and I'm not saying this to praise myself, but it's the truth, I said this is going to be, inshallah, one of the best talks. And this, bi'idhnillah, is going to be our finest hour. Did I say this not? We're making wudu. I'm saying it was going to say, but I said this is going to be our finest hour. Don't worry. I've been in situations worse than this, more difficult than this, more troublesome than this. This is nothing. And alhamdulillah, I was prepared to give the talk in the dark. And when I came to the masjid, of course, it was a bit shocking. It's weird, it's peculiar. All the different masjids that we've been to and traveled to, I've never come to a masjid which is just pitch black dark. And it's cold and it's raining and it's damp. It's like, what's going on? However, I started thinking about a story that one of my teachers told me. A story which I believe is only halfway applicable to this situation. But half is better than nothing. Half is better than nothing. So one day, we're in Medina. We're in the College of Hadith. I think it was maybe my second year. We're studying with one of the professors there. And this was when the iPad started becoming really popular overseas in Saudi. People had tablets. People had iPhones or iPod touches. But it was in the early stages. It was nothing like how it is now. Face recognition and retina and fingerprints. It was nothing like this, all right? It was in the early stages of development overseas. Of course, the West, UK, places like this were a bit ahead of the Middle East. So students were talking about the iPad, and they were talking about the computers and the laptops, Maktab al-Shamila, Jawami al-Kalim, the ways of making takhrij of a hadith electronically. So some of the students say, yeah, Sheikh, you should get one. You should do this. You should have a computer. You should. And he said, perhaps there's some good in this technology. Perhaps it is. He says, but what happens when you go to a place, you go to a country, you go to a masjid, you have your laptop, you have your projector screen, and all of a sudden, there's a power outage. The lights go out. Your knowledge, your hadith, your ilm, now where is it? You're going to be stuck, right? This is what he asked the students. They said, Naam, Sheikh, you're right. And he said, and this is one of the reasons why I would never ever depend upon a laptop. Or I would never depend upon a tablet or a smartphone for my class and for my lecture. Would I use it? Would I benefit from it? Mumkin. Hal asta'inu biha? Use it on the side? Maybe. But I would never a'tamid alayha i'timadan kulliyan. Total reliance and dependence upon a piece of electricity. And that's because I could be in a country in which there's no electricity. I could be in a land in which there's a power outage. And me, myself, let's pause that story for a second. I've been to a few countries overseas and in different parts of the world in which there's regular and normal power outages. Whether they run out of power or whether the government chooses to regulate the power distribution, that is too much electricity. And there lies no doubt this is normal in certain countries. I want to mention the name of those countries now, in which everybody knows it's 7 p.m., get your floodlights ready, get your candles ready, get your battery ready because the power is going out in 20 minutes. And you'll be shocked and surprised how people continue to live their lives with no electricity. The marketplaces do not shut down. The souk doesn't stop. No one is bothered or disturbed by the lights going off. So I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. But who would expect in such a modern and advanced and cultured civilization such as the United Kingdom to have power outage just like that? There's no storm outside, there's no hurricane, there's no tsunami, there's no earthquake or tornado, there's no supernatural natural disaster. Things are normal and the power goes out. It's abnormal. It's not some third world country, it's abnormal. But Allah Azza wa Jalla, He chose that to happen. And that's what I thought about when I was walking into the masjid. I said, inshallah, now I'm paying off the debt and earning the stripes from that sheikh when he said about never relying just on electronics. And FYI, a couple weeks later, the sheikh, he came to the class with an iPad. He actually brought an iPad and a laptop. And then all of a sudden, the laptop had stopped working. And the student said, yeah, sheikh, what's wrong with your electronics? He says, أَخَافُ أَنَّهُ قَدْ أَصَابَهَا أَوْ أَصَابَتْهَا عَيْنٌ. He says, maybe one of your what? One of your eyes fell upon the computer. He says, give me your wudu. Give me the water that you make wudu with so I can pour it upon the electricity. Ashahid. The point from the story, and the moral of the story is clear, is that you never know what's going to happen to you. You may hear a piece of wisdom, you may hear a lesson, and it may take you 10 or 15 years later on to experience it yourself. And subhanAllah, that pertains directly to our topic of children and the father and son relationship. I myself remember countless things that my father told me that I didn't necessarily believe in, or I didn't necessarily understand, or I thought it was just some type of philosophy, some, falsafa. Yeah, sure, right. And then subhanAllah, 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, you say, subhanAllah, that's what Abby was talking about. That's what he was warning me from. This is the potential that he saw. This is what he knew, what Allah had allowed him to know, what would happen in my life, so on and so on and so forth. So when it comes to talking to your sons and your daughters, a very important piece of advice is don't be hasty. And don't think that your advice has to be acted upon and implemented immediately. Your job is to sow the seeds. That's it. Water the seeds. Keep the weeds out the garden. That's your job. The flower will grow, it will bloom, it will blossom when it's ready and made to grow, bloom, and blossom. Just because your son isn't listening now, it doesn't mean that he'll never listen. Just because your son isn't following your legacy now, it doesn't mean that he won't grow and mature into it. And the same applies to your daughter. And many parents, they become frustrated. They become angry. They become upset. And they say, you're not listening. You're never listening. Are you listening? Are you listening, son? Are your ears open? Are you listening to me? This is how we behave and react with our children. Instead of, listen, son, this is the proper way of doing it. This is the best way of doing it. Proven. Not just because it's my opinion. You have to do it like this. You have to take care of yourself. And inshallah, he has the headphones on. He's playing the video games. Yeah, okay, Abby, right, shukran. No problem. Walk off. You've done your job. You've taught him. You've explained it to him. If Allah wills for him to act upon that advice, he will. And if Allah does not will, you're not helping the situation at all. Rather, you're just making a further division and a wedge between you and him. And that's because the first thing that the child is going to say is, my father's always on my back. He's He's always harassing me. He's always saying the same thing. He's always embarrassing me. He's always lecturing me. Abby, the same lecture again? This is what they say. Instead of doing your job, give the message, spread the message, give the teachings, and occasionally just what? Walk away. And you will be shocked in the results when they feel that a person is not always harassing them and breathing down their necks 24/7. And you'll be shocked how much the child will appreciate the wisdom and appreciate the teachings when they themselves do it at their own convenience. And I can speak from that personally. What my father said to me 20 years ago when I was yay high, a little boy, now I'm this age, I have my own children, I have my own life, I value it more. I respect it more. It has a sweeter taste. And then I have yaqeen in what he was saying to me. Instead of just doing it on the spot to please him, to keep him silent, and to make him happy, even though deep down in my heart, I feel that it's nonsense what he just told me. It doesn't make any sense. What do you mean I can't and I can't? That doesn't make any sense. So oftentimes you have to just sow the seeds, water, give the sunlight, keep the weeds away. Very important as well. You must sow the seeds. You must give it. You must pour the necessary water. You must allow the necessary sunlight. You must keep away the weeds and the insects and the beetles and things like this. And then be patient and allow it to grow and to bloom by itself. And be you haven't wasted your role as a father or a mother. You did your job. And if they don't listen, if they don't follow, then that's not your responsibility. Khalas. That's all you have to do. And this wisdom is also applicable to knowledge and applicable to da'wah. It's a very important piece of advice for myself and a very important piece of advice for all imams and any type of da'i or student of knowledge is that you don't have to force the people to do anything. You don't have to beat the people upside their heads. You don't have to carry around a billy club or a nightstick. You teach the sunnah, you explain to them what's correct, you give them the nasiha, you speak, and that's it. And many of the pious predecessors, they would say this, such as Ibn Malik rahimahullah fima adhkuru wa illam yakun Malik fahuwa Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. He was asked, Ar-rajulu yujadilu an sunnah. Should a man fight and debate and argue for that which is correct and that which is the sunnah? Qala la. He said no. وَلَكِنَّهُ يُخْبِرُ بِهَا فَإِنْ قُبِلَتْ مِنْهُ وَإِلَّا سَكَتَ. Tell the people about what's correct, teach them, explain to them. If they take it, then alhamdulillah, and if not, khalas, you've done your job. Abusing and harrying and harassing, no, you don't do that because that's only going to push someone further and further away. And that's going to cause them to have much, much more rebellion and lack of appreciation for what you're saying at the moment. Khairan, inshallah. So with that being said, Allah has shown us tonight is that what's important is how things end. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالْخَوَاتِيمِ, the hadith says. Deeds are only based off of their endings. It's not how it starts and how it begins, but how it ends. So the lights were off at one point in time. It was cold. It was confusion. It was a bit of disgruntledness. And now look, everyone is sitting in the lights. Walillahi alhamd. But the lights only came on when Allah wanted them to come on. It didn't come on by us continuing to fiddle and play around with this generator or this. Nah. We offered the salah. We submitted. We accepted it, what Allah had decreed upon us. The lights are off. We're going to make Isha. We're going to do the lecture. And that's it. Khalas. And then when we left it alone, we walked away from it. Behold, the lights came back on. That's a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is something that we should take. We should translate this into our daily lives. Try your best. Once you have exerted all of your energy, step away. And the moment that you step away from it, after you've exerted yourself, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, Allah will provide. Allah will allow it to happen, and Allah will take place. But if you continue to fight and fuss and play with the electricity, Allah knows best. It's a big possibility that what? The lights, they may not have come back on. And we would have been sitting right here cold, damp, wet, and dark. Khayr, inshallah. So with that being said, brothers and sisters, the importance of the relationship between the father and the son. And the same applies to the relationship between the mother and the daughter. This whole entire trip, we've been trying to focus on the household. Baytul Muslim, the household of the Muslim. And there's so many different angles and perspectives of a subject of such. Mother, father, son, daughter, uncle, grandmother, stepson, stepdaughter, neighbor. With regards to responsibility, with regards to role, with regards to etiquette, and with regards to ruling, so on and so forth. So this phase is, what is the relationship supposed to be like with regards to me and my son? What is the relationship as a Muslim supposed to be like with regards to me and my daughter? What is the relationship with regards to me and my stepsons and my stepdaughters? Because many people, they do have stepchildren. And the Prophet ﷺ himself, he has stepchildren. And many people, they think that it's dishonorable or it's ignoble to have a stepson or a stepdaughter, and to marry a woman who's been married before, and to marry a woman who has children. Many people, they ignorantly think this and feel this. You can't marry a woman who has children. The Prophet ﷺ himself, he married a woman that had children. And he looked after his stepchildren, and he taught his stepchildren, and he tried his best to be the best stepfather that he could possibly be. So there's no shame in marrying a woman that has children. Allah may bless you with a woman that's been married before, that was divorced. She may be more righteous, she may be more pious, she may be more compatible for you than a woman who's the youngest, untouched woman from this tribe or from this family or from this city. Allah could give you barakah and something that you don't know about and you don't even realize. So that's something to be mindful of with regards to blended families. And in the United States, there are many people who have blended families. They're married, they have a stepson, they have a stepdaughter, so on and so forth. Khairan, inshallah. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about what you should be and how the relationship should be. Because to me, that's too cosmetic. And that's too pretty. That's too synthetic. And that's what everyone is going to talk about. And everyone is going to say, picture perfect world. You're going to be like this. You're going to hold hands. No, that's not what we want to do right now. We want to talk about the opposite. We want to talk about what you shouldn't be. We want to talk about what you shouldn't do. The ulama of Islam, they say that there are different styles and ways of teaching. One style and one way is to ask a question. It's to ask a question. The Prophet ﷺ, he asked his companions, "Atadruna mal ghiba?" Do you know what backbiting is? The Prophet ﷺ, he didn't need the companions to answer. He was the messenger of Allah. He didn't need to expect to see what they were going to say. But he asked them, "Atadruna mal ghiba?" Do you know what it is? He taught them in the form of a question. And another style, uslubun akhar min asalib al-ta'lim, another way of teaching is for someone else to ask a question, as Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. And subhanallah, how perfect is Allah. The hadith of Jibreel is so amazing. Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam did nothing but ask a question and give confirmation. That's it. Akhbirni. That's what he said. Tell me. Akhbirni. And then he said, Sadaqta. That's it. Nothing else. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ja'a liyu'allimakum dinakum. He made Jibreel's questions as ta'lim. And all he did was ask a question. Not like the first style. Pay attention. There's a difference. هناك فرق. الحديث الأول أتدرون ما الغيبة؟ هذا سؤال من الأستاذ إلى التلميذ. أتدرون ما الغيبة؟ قالوا كذا كذا وكذا. أتدرون من المفلس؟ قالوا إلى آخره. ثم النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام أجابهم وشرح لهم ما المقصود الشرعي بالغيبة أو المقصود الشرعي بالمفلس إلى في أحاديث كثيرة. أما حديث جبريل فإنه قد سأل وما أجاب. سأل مجرد سؤال ومجرد تصديق والنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم جعل كل هذا إيش؟ تعليما للدين. هناك فرق بين المثال الأول أو القسم الأول والقسم الثاني. The first hadith, the Prophet ﷺ asked the question himself, and then he gave the answer, right? The second category is for someone else to ask a question, and that is also a style of teaching. Jibreel asked the question. Jibreel did not answer the question, and the Prophet ﷺ, he did not say, "I have taught you your deen." In reality, the Prophet ﷺ did what? What did the Prophet do in this hadith? He taught. Al-Islamu this. Al-Imanu that. Al-Ihsan is this. He told the people about the signs of the last day. The Prophet taught, but that's not what he said. The Prophet said he has come to you to teach you your deen. So that's another way of teaching, is for someone to ask a question without answering the question. A third style of teaching is to teach with the opposite, is to reverse it. Instead of me showing you what the prayer is like, I'm going to show you what the prayer isn't like. Instead of me showing you the proper way to dress, I'm going to mismatch my clothes. I want to have all types of bad colors and fabrics. And I want to say, do not dress like this. This shade of red is not this shade of red. You have to be coordinated. This fabric, this style doesn't go with that. These boots don't belong with this hat. And I never ever show you the proper way of dressing. It's a huge difference now. I'm showing you the way that you're not supposed to dress. So you may not get it the first time. You may not get it the second time, the third or the fourth. But eventually, it's going to start clicking. Oh, I get it now. So if he's saying that he has on teal green, Kelly green, forest green, and you don't dress like this, he shows me 2 or 3 times. It clearly proves that if I'm wearing green, it has to be one shade. One shade of green, lime green. Everybody understand this? If I wear everything from top to bottom and it's all one color, and I say, do not dress like this, you will understand, wear different color socks to break the plain color. So therefore, that's what I want to do tonight, Bidnai Ta'ala, is talk about how the father is not to be. And to talk about how the mother is not to be. And Bidnai Ta'ala, as the ulama say, وَبِضِدِّ الْأَشْيَاءِ أَوْ بِضِدِّهِ تَتَبَيَّنَ الْأَشْيَاءُ. That things become clear and manifested through the opposite. You know what's correct from learning occasionally, not all the time, what's incorrect. So therefore, Bidnai Ta'ala, what is the relationship between father and son not supposed to be? What is the relationship between mother and daughter not supposed to be? And nothing here is based off of arithmetics. It doesn't just have to be father and son. Rather, it could be mother and son, and father and daughter. We have to get out of this stereotype that it has to be just father and son. No, that's not true. Mother and son, father and daughter. In the United States, that's what we say. We have a mama's boy, and we have a daddy's girl. Boys, in most cases, they incline more towards their mother, especially when they're younger. And girls, in most cases, they incline more towards the father. The father can't say no. The father, we call him, he's a softie. He never disciplines them. The children, they know that Abby is just going to be the sweetest, easiest thing. But Umi, we're terrified to break the rules with her. And vice versa. The son feels that the Abby is too harsh or he's too mean. And he runs and Umi says, come here, son, what's the matter? No, leave him. Don't punish him. Don't discipline him. She spoils him. And when he grows and he leaves the home, his friends and his companions say, oh, you're a mama's boy. Your mama's not out here right now. You better stop crying. She can't help you. In other words, it's time for you to be what? A man. And realize the real life. So oftentimes, opposites attract. Oftentimes, the relationship is better with the mother and the son. And oftentimes, the relationship is better with the father, what? And the daughter. And this is proven. This is proven. As many wise men said, that I loved my mother and I only respected my father. One of the greatest leaders in history, I won't mention his name, this is what he said about his upbringing. I never loved my father. I respected him. I was afraid of him, but I never liked him and I never loved him. My mother, on the other hand, total different story. I actually loved her. I actually had a relationship with her. And life isn't always perfect. And sometimes someone may not like you. You may not have the best relationship, but that's not necessarily your job. Your job is not necessarily to be a friend. Your job is not necessarily to have the best, sweetest, perfect relationship. Your job is to teach your son. Your job is to educate your son. Your job is to protect your son. And your job is to prepare your son for the real world. That's your job initially. If you guys can be friends and get along and talk and be friendly, then alhamdulillah, that's a tremendous blessing. That's a tremendous blessing. And if that's not the case, you take what is there. And you may grow old, you may become sick, you may be upon your deathbed. Your son never liked you. But if you were just with your son, and you taught him, and you prepared him, and you sheltered him, you provided for him, he's going to come and visit you in the hospital. He's going to come and look after you. He's going to pay his respects. He's going to do whatever you ask him to do, even though he still to this day dislikes you. But father was never unjust. He was a just father. Ummi is a different story. Uncle, different story. Father, never really liked him, but I did respect him, and that's because he was a good man. I saw him go from darkness and come home at darkness. Do you know what this means? I saw him leave when it's dark and come home when it's dark for his entire life. Meaning he left before Fajr to go to work. And he only came home from work after Isha. He never saw his father in the daytime. And that's because he always struggled just to make basic ends meet. It's going to mean something upon the son, even if he doesn't have that type of relationship. So therefore, to protect your son, to shelter your son, and most importantly, to prepare your son. So with that being said, what should the father avoid? And how should the father not be with his son? I'm going to mention perhaps one or two things. One piece of etiquette, which is extremely important, is highly dangerous, and it is very, very widespread and ultimately universal. And most parents, most fathers, most mothers, they fall into. And it is something that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ has warned us from. And that is a piece of advice that the Prophet ﷺ gave to one of his companions, coming to him and asking him for advice. The hadith is in Sahih Bukhari. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrated, أن رجلا جاء إلى النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام فقال أوصني, give me advice, O Messenger of Allah. Give me wasiyah. Give me something to hold fast to. The Prophet ﷺ, with all of his eloquence and all of his beautiful way of expressing himself, the beauty of his tongue, alayhi salatu wasalam, let alone the knowledge that Allah had gave him, he said short, simple, basic words. He said, لا تغضب. فردد عليه. قال لا تغضب. فردد عليه. فردد عليه مرارا في رواية. The man asked the second time, a third time, a fourth time. He kept asking him, Osini, give me advice. After the first time, all right, give me some real advice. Okay, I got the message. Give me some real advice. He said, لا تغضب. He says, don't become angry. Give me advice, O Messenger of Allah. Don't get angry. Give me more advice. Don't become angry. Give me a third piece of advice. He said, what? لا تغضب. Do not become angry. Why did the Prophet say this to this man? Did this man have an anger problem? Did this man have some type of chemical imbalance? Was this man an abusive person, an impulsive person, and an emotionally unstable person? Why did the Prophet ﷺ choose to say, لا تغضب? He didn't say, ittaqillah, fear Allah. He didn't say, pay zakah, give sadaqah. He didn't say, go out in the cause of Allah. He didn't say, be mindful of Allah. He said, لا تغضب. Don't become angry. Let's see what the scholars of Islam say about this prophetic narration. قال الجرداني رحمه الله أن هذا الحديث حديث عظيم وهو من جوامع الكلم لأنه جمع بين خير الدنيا والآخرة. وقال ابن التين رحمه الله جمع في قوله لا تغضب خير الدنيا والآخرة لأن الغضب يؤول إلى التقاطع ومنع الرفق وربما آل إلى أن يؤذي المغضوب عليه فينقص ذلك من الدين. وقال ابن حجر الهيتمي رحمه الله هذا الحديث من بدائع جوامع كلمه التي خص بها صلى الله عليه وسلم. وقال غيره هذا الحديث عظيم يتضمن دفع أكثر شرور اللسان لأن الشخص في حال حياته بين لذة وألم فاللذة سببها ثوران الشهوة أكلا وشربا وجماعا ونحو ذلك والألم سببه ثوران الغضب فإذا اجتنبه يدفع عنه نصف الشر بل أكثر. وقال غيره حديث الغضب هذا ربع الإسلام لأن الأعمال خير وشر والشر ينشأ عن شهوة أو غضب والخير يتضمن نفي الغضب فتضمن نفي الشر وهو ربع المجموع. وقال ابن حجر رحمه الله تعالى عن بعضهم قال تفكرت فيما قال أي قول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تغضب فإذا الغضب يجمع الشر كله. Listen to these beautiful words of the ulama of Islam. From those commentators is a man whose name was Al-Juddani. He said this hadith, and هذا hadith hadithun عظيم. He said it's a tremendous prophetic narration. عظيم, tremendous. وهو من جوامع كلمه. And this hadith that's so short, that's so simple, that is easily memorized and understood, but can be explained, expounded upon, commented on in volumes. Jawami al-kalim. Words that the Prophet ﷺ made that were concise, that were short, that were simple, but extremely meaningful. And that is because لأنه جمع بين خير الدنيا والآخرة أو جمع خير الدنيا والآخرة. And that's because this hadith has included and it has mentioned the good of this life and of the hereafter. What does this mean? How can two words include the good of this life and the good of the hereafter? Kaif? How is this, ya akhi? The Prophet ﷺ said, La taghdab, do not become angry. And this man, he says, and he claims that the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith has given you everything of good of this life and of the next. Explain this to me, akhi, please. What does this mean? Fadda.
You can take benefits from both this life and the next.
The good of this life and the next. How? From two words, La taghdab.
Because
3 words in English, or 4. Do not become angry.
Because if you implement in this life, you'll get the reward for it.
Nah, it's not convincing. Doesn't make sense to me. I'm not convinced. How does one simple hadith include the good of this life and of the hereafter? La taghdab. La taghdab. Don't get angry. Wow, how is this? Before we can understand these words and appreciate their beauty, we have to look at the ugliness of anger. Once more, the style is used again. You understand the proper thing from learning the improper thing. It's opposite. So in order for something for you not to do will lead you to getting the good of this life and the next, that means that prohibited thing has to be extremely what? Dangerous, destructive, ruinous, and ugly. Everybody understand this? This thing is so tremendously dangerous. It's horrible. It's formidable. That the sheer fact that you avoid it and stay away from it, that means you're automatically going to win. And you're going to get the good of this life and of the hereafter. Because anger is so what? Destructive. It's ruinous. It tears apart the threads of anything that you're trying to wear and put on. Danger causes you to say this, to do this, to feel this way, to have others do this, and the list goes on. How many humans have lost their lives and have their lives squandered, their souls poured out like water because of nothing more than what? Anger. This is universal, and this is accepted by the Muslims and the non-Muslims. We'll get back to that, inshallah, why anger is so bad. Another scholar, he said, why it has included the good of this life and the next is because لأن الغضب يؤول إلى التقاطع ومنع الرفق. It says anger leads to breaking and severing of relationships. Anger leads to destroying relationships. These scholars are not talking about father and son. But if a father is angry, he does not control his anger. He acts upon his anger. He allows himself to become angry all the time for the smallest, simplest trifle. It will eventually lead between what? He is here and his son is what? There. Now what can the son learn from the father if they're separated like that? What will the son listen to with regards to his father's advice if it's like that? When you get cancer and diabetes, or whatever happens to you when you grow old, your liver stops working, your lungs, whatever problem that you have in this worldly life, you think he's going to come and visit you? Serve you? You think he's going to say, Father, say La ilaha illallah before you die, oh Father? You think he's going to make wudu on you? You think he's going to clean you because you can't clean yourself anymore? The haughty man that you used to be, huffing and puffing and growling and snarling, and you were angry, you punched the wall and punched people. Now you're weak, you're sick, and you're old. You can't even clean yourself anymore when you use the bathroom. Your son is not going to have no love or respect for you if there's a total gap in separation. And that is a fruit of what? Of ghadab, of anger, he says. He then says, comment on this hadith, and perhaps it leads to those whom you become angry with being harmed. Verbally, call you a bad name. Son, you're this, you're like that. You say to your wife, come get your son. Come get your son. Look what your son is doing. I had to go to the police station and do what? Pick up whose son? Your son. He's no longer my son. Even though he has half of me as well. He looks like me. Rather, what he's doing now is what I used to do 40 years ago. Talk to your grandmother and she'll tell you, your father was the same way. Don't think that he's calm and collective now and he was always like that. He was wild just like you were. But instead of me calling it my son, he's now what? This is your son. So therefore he abuses his son verbally. Or he may actually physically hit his son. And then many fathers, unfortunately, they harm their sons and their daughters financially with money. If you don't listen to me and obey me by going to the school that I want you to go to, or picking the career that I want you to pick, or marrying the woman that I want you to marry, I will no longer what? Take care of you. I won't support you financially. This is the akhlaq of many, many fathers. In most cases, it only comes from what? Them becoming angry. Because I don't want to go to law school, I want to be a doctor. I don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer. I want to be a physician, or I want to be a poet. I like poetry. And I want to make a career being a poet. I want to write books on poetry, and I want to travel the world sharing my poetry. No. You must be an engineer. You must be a doctor. You can't get married to this woman. So therefore, I'm not coming to your walima. Don't expect me at your nikah. Don't expect me to come to your aqiqah. And I will not accept that child as my grandson. All of those harsh and nasty words are based off of what? Anger. Him not giving him any money is based off of anger, let alone actual physical abuse. It's based off of nothing more than what? Anger. So you may think that by beating someone and hitting someone, they're getting closer to you, or they're becoming more submissive, but in actuality, it's what? It's pushing them further away. Moving forward, he says, فَيَنْقُصُ ذَلِكَ مِنَ الدِّينِ. And when you become angry, you hit somebody, you slander, you curse someone, that is going to lead to your religion being what? Deficient. Because a believer is not supposed to curse. A believer is not supposed to abuse. A believer is not supposed to spit obscenities. A believer is never profane and obscene. A believer does not damage people physically with his hands and his strength. A believer is supposed to be the what? The opposite. So anger automatically leads to a deficiency in your what? In your religion. If your religion is deficient, then for sure you've already lost what? The what? What have you lost now? The akhirah. You understand now? The good of the hereafter is what? It's gone. And if you hit someone, abuse someone, beat someone incorrectly, unjustly, of course you've lost out on the good of this life. You got it now? How does hadith includes the good of this life and of the what? And of the hereafter. A third commentator, he says, this hadith proves that most evils that a man will commit and fall into stem from anger. They stem from anger. How is this? He says, and that's because لأن الشخص في حال حياته بين لذة وألم. Listen carefully to these words. He says there's one and two states that you're going to be in if you're alive. Joy or pain. Joy or pain. Sweetness or bitterness. One of the two. لذة وألم. You understand this? Either happy or you're sad. You're either sweet or you're sour. Right? One of the two. If it's not raining, cloudy, then it's going to be sunny outside. Alamin wa ladha, or ladha wa alam. He says here, what does ladha come from? Joy comes from what? It stems from what?
Remembrance of Allah.
La. We're talking about humans now. Just humans. It comes from something that you desire. Something that you want. Something that you seek. Something that you eat. Something that you drink. How you feel physically, sexually. Some type of joy or pleasure, some indulgence comes from a what? A lust. Something that you desire and that you want. Is this not the case? He says, and pain stems from and comes from what? Anger. It comes from inner anger. People that need therapy, you find them, they were abused. They were taken advantage of. They went through traumatic experiences. And that's why a person feels that I need to do physical harm to others. Not because I like it, or it's fun, but because it's hurting on the inside. And that's why we say hurt people, hurt people. That's the qaida, that's the rule. Hurt people do what? They hurt people. You're not killing people. He's not wiping away civilizations because it feels good and he likes it, but because he was abused and wronged at a young age. So the only thing that temporarily numbs that pain is to what? It's to hurt others. And if you read about the tyrants in history, people who killed millions of people, you'll find 9 out of 10 of them went through a seriously traumatic experience in boyhood. Read about this emperor or this Khan, or this dictator, or this fascist leader, or this person who killed all of these people, he himself was berated from his father as a boy. Or his father was a horrible drunkard, and he beat his mother to a pulp every single night, and he had to witness it and watch it. You'll find this is universal. So therefore, alam, this type of pain that a person is suffering from, it stems from anger. And when a boy sees his mother being abused and beat and hit and disrespected, he wants to fight back, but what can he do? He's this small and his father is this high. Him seeing his mother being hurt and harmed is going to cause him what? Anger. He's going to become angry. And that anger is going to make a cycle. He says, rahimahullah ta'ala, وَالْأَلَمُ ثَوْرَانَ الْغَضَبِ فَإِذَا اجْتَنَبَهُ يَدْفَعُ عَنْهُ نِصْفَ الشَّرِّ بَلْ أَكْثَرُ. And therefore, when a person avoids anger, half of evil, rather more of evil, he'll be removed therefrom. So let's stop and let's think about a father and his son, a mother and her daughter. What happens when a father has an anger problem? The son drops something on the floor. The son makes a mistake. The son has an imperfection. The son has a flaw. Rather, it's nothing that the son did. But the son takes out on the child the fact that he looks like the mother, or behaves like the mother, and he doesn't like the mother, or he's not with the mother anymore. So he's going to take it out on this poor son, the fact that something is wrong. And the smallest, tiniest, most minute mistake, he's going to amplify it. And it's going to turn into the end of the world through anger. So how close will the son be? How much will the son learn from the father if the father cannot control his anger? The scholars of Islam, they say this hadith has two main interpretations. When the Prophet ﷺ said, لا تغضب, is على أحد معنيين. The first interpretation is, لا تغضب. Is literally, don't get angry. Even though you have the ability or the reason to get angry. Do not become angry. And others, they say, لا تغضب, يعني لا تنفذ الغضب. When you do get angry, do not implement your anger. Son, you just broke this. I just told you to sit down. You got in trouble at school. I'm very angry. It's embarrassing for me to take off of work and come to your school to talk to your teacher because you couldn't behave in class. There's no doubt about that. But I'm not going to discipline you because I'm angry. And I'm not going to embarrass you in public because I'm angry. I'm going to discipline you for your own benefit. Because if I strike out because of my anger, it's going to be above what you did. It's going to be beyond what you actually deserve of discipline. And what is the purpose of disciplining a child except for what? The child being straightened. And not you taking revenge against the child. And many parents, they make a mistake like this. And they have different extremes. One extreme is, you're getting a beating. No doubt about that. You're going to get a beating. There's no doubt about that. I'm putting you in punishment, and so on and so on and so forth. But what the child did, or the other things that the child has of mistake and error, you don't punish them for. But now I'm angry. And I'm going to take out my anger on you via discipline, via physical discipline. And that's a huge problem. And then there are other people who have the exact philosophy, the exact opposite philosophy. Many people say you can't discipline a child. You shouldn't physically discipline a child. Let the child be. Don't be mean. Don't be harsh. Be patient, etc. So we have a 3-year-old child, a 7-year-old child, a 10-year-old child. The mother or the father, they allow them to do whatever they wish to do. Say what you want, do what you want, go where you want. It doesn't matter. They never ever discipline the child. And then when the child continues to disobey and disrespect, and they push the parent to the boiling point and the shatter point, then they snap. And they lash out with their anger, and they go crazy on the child. And is of no use and there's no benefit. Instead of disciplining the child earlier on, and which you could have prevented you becoming at that level of what? Of ghadab, of anger. So therefore, many parents, they only discipline their children because of anger. They only talk to their children because of anger. And they don't realize is that when you act that way, and you behave that way, the child is no longer willing to listen to you. And oftentimes, when you only discipline your child in one way, the child becomes immune to it. They understand he's going to put me on punishment, and then that's it. He's going to curse, he's going to do this, and then he's going to calm down, and I'm going to go right back to the haram act. I'm going to go right back to the bad act. I don't have to listen to him. All he's going to do is just get angry and get mad, and that's it. So shaitan, he uses anger to cause a split between a father and a son, a mother and a daughter. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ warned us from anger, because it is so ruinous. And anger is a manifestation that a person does not have control over the situation. And if you don't have control over the situation, that is a manifestation of weakness. You're weak. And that's why men become angry when they don't get their way. They're used to getting their way. They're used to things going how they want them to go. And the moment that it doesn't go, they become angry. And that, there lies no doubt, that's a manifestation of what? Of weakness. And how can you raise a strong son? How can you raise a strong daughter and you yourself are so emotionally fragile? What lesson are you giving your son? When something goes bad, just curse. Just pound on the table. Just punch the wall. Just abuse someone. Just spew out curse words and say bad things. The son is going to sit down and say, wow, Abby's really weak. He's a weak person. And the only thing that I have to do to get him to act out of his character and to lose his cool is to get under his skin and on his nerves. And then he's a whole different person. That's not strength. And one of the most important ingredients to instill in a young boy and also in a young girl is strength and composure. And it's not physical strength, but it's inner strength. And one of the greatest things to teach your children is to control themselves. Control yourselves. You're going to get in trouble, no doubt about that. But there's no point in me becoming angry. I want to discipline you with a clear mind. And I'm going to discipline you in an objective manner. And the same applies to divorce. And the same applies to fighting and arguing. And the list goes on. No good comes from anger unless that anger is controlled. And unless it is honed. And unless that anger is harvested into positive energy. Then anger is a good thing. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ became angry in certain instances and in certain times. Emotions are useful and they're good, but only when they are controlled, when they're under control. So the Prophet ﷺ, he says, لا تغضب, أي لا تتعرض لأسباب الغضب. Another interpretation is do not allow yourself to be in a situation and a position in which you become angry. Or if you do become angry, then do not act upon your anger. Rather, suffice it, stifle it, walk away from it, calm down, cool your head, and then bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, act accordingly. Act accordingly. And it doesn't mean that you don't discipline. It doesn't mean that you don't speak out. It doesn't mean that you don't have no emotions and no feelings. It doesn't mean that. But it means you're in control of your emotions. And if the son sees this, if the daughter sees this, that my father does get angry because he is a human being, but he controls himself. Or if he does become angry, he stops. Or there's a limit, there's a control to his anger, or his jealousy, or his sadness, or any other type of emotion. You have taught your son so much at a young age. And he's going to know how to behave and how to do things the proper and the correct way. The Prophet ﷺ, he said to the father, he said to the mother, he said to any and every Muslim, لا تغضب. Don't get angry. So one of the most important things that you shouldn't be as a father, and one of the worst and most ruinous emotions and actions of a father or a mother, is uncontrolled anger. At the time, the level, how long you become angry, or just the sheer fact of having too thin skin, in which the smallest, simplest mistake, you become angry at your child, you curse at your child, or you beat your child, or you slander your child, or you embarrass your child, or you wish to punish your child just because you yourself cannot control your anger. There's a narration, and Allah knows best. I'll stop my talk with this. Allah surely knows best if it's authentic or not. Al-Muhim, some say that it was one of the companions. Another say it was Ali radiallahu anhu. Allahu alam, exactly what it was. They were fighting and they were battling. And all of a sudden, as this companion was on the battlefield, and he had his sword or his spear or his halberd or his lance, whatever weapon he was using, his axe. And all of a sudden, one of the mushrikeen spat in his face. He put his spit on his face. And the companion began to pull up his sword and bring it back down. And all of a sudden, he stopped. And he said to himself, if I cut you and hacked you into pieces, it wouldn't be for the sake of Allah. It would only be because you just disrespected and humiliated me. And he walked away from the man on the battlefield. What a tremendous example of making your anger, your wrath, your strength only under control. You have control of it. And it isn't a loose, unleashed dog that leads you. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, He tells us about the virtue and the benefits of dogs which are trained. Al-Mukallibin, tu'allimunahunna mimma 'allamakum Allah. You teach them from that which Allah has what? Taught you. What does the Prophet say about a dog? Muslims are not allowed to have dogs. Every day that you have a dog, your rewards are diminished. Angels do not enter the home in which there is a dog. But in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah Azza wa Jalla has allowed us to use dogs. And He mentions dogs as a benefit, but with the condition that the dog is mu'allim, has to be taught. And the scholars of Islam, they say that the al-kalb al-mu'allim, idha stursila, when it is sent, it goes. And when you say stop, it immediately stops. And when you tell it to put down the duck or the fowl or whatever it's hunting, it drops it. And it doesn't kill just to kill for itself. In other words, the strength of the dog's jaws, its teeth, its hands, the skills of the dog, they're under what? Control. Now it's a blessing. As far as if the dog does what it wants to do, eats how it wants to eat, attacks when it wants to attack, Allah has not allowed us to use this what? This type of dog. So that is the similarity of anger. Anger, when it's used properly, is a good thing. Emotions, when they're used properly, they're natural and they're a good thing, inshallah. But when you're out of control, they control you. You do not control them, then they are utterly ruinous. And there are many evils and lust, envy, jealousy. But the top of them is ghadab. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, La taghdab. Don't get angry. So that's the piece of advice for every father and from every mother, is do not get angry at your children unnecessarily. If you discipline them, if you reprimand them, do it in the proper way, inshallah ta'ala. And most importantly, try your best to be simple, to be easy, to be a simple, easygoing parent, inshallah ta'ala. Speak with your children, explain to your children, use sense, use reasoning with your children, and avoid anger, because anger is connected to pride and arrogance, the ulama of Islam say. I'm bigger than you, I'm stronger than you, I'm tougher than you, I have more money than you, I have more knowledge than you, so therefore, I can afford to become angry with you, because I'm on top. But the moment someone is bigger and greater and stronger than me, a person, they control the anger now, Sayyid. An abusive husband in front of a man that's stronger and bigger than him, what is he going to do? He's not going to do much. And that's because his pride is now on pause, because he knows that he's outmatched. But a weak, poor, helpless woman, he's angry all of the time. So unnecessary anger, extreme anger, easy anger, anger that is extreme, is a sign of weakness in a man. And weakness and iman are like water and oil. Just like strength and iman is like white on rice. Muslim is supposed to be strong. Al-mu'minun qawi khayrun wa ahabbu ila Allah min al-mu'min ad-da'if. The believer who is strong is better and more beloved to Allah than the believer who's weak. So strength and iman go like white on rice. Weakness and iman go like water and oil. Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best. We ask Him to make us good fathers and to make us good mothers, and to allow our children to learn and benefit from us, and allow us to have good relationships, healthy relationships with our children and our stepchildren, which we can help them and serve them for this life and of the hereafter. And Allah surely knows best.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers. Jazakumullah khairan for coming and being patient. We want to ask Allah to reward the Shaykh for taking the time out to come and teach us. Alhamdulillah, just as a reminder, next Friday we have another talk after Salat al-Isha. We have Shaykh Abdul Nasir al-Libi coming, and he's going to be continuing the monthly series about life in the grave. So spread the message and be sure to come. Jazakumullah khairan.
If they like, inshallah. If not, no problem.
Inshallah, we'll have some time for questions, so if anyone has any questions, just raise your hands, inshallah.
Inshallah. We'll take a few from online, sure. Fadda. Go ahead, Akhi.
What about the best thing to do is when you like ex, doesn't that same kids? Like what should I do if I'm not allowed to see my kids? Like,
If you're not allowed to see your children.
yeah.
Okay, type. If you're not allowed to see your children, it depends on why. If it's something that you're doing and it prevents you from seeing your children, whether it's Islamic or whether it pertains to some legal issue, try your best to stop that, to avoid it, wherever it may be, whatever that reason may be. Seek Allah's help and try yourself to take the practical steps to avoid the reason behind you not seeing your children. As far as if it's something that you're not doing but you did in the past, you did wrong, or whatever the reason is in the past that prevents the system or your ex-wife, or I'm not saying you have a girlfriend, a person he has a girlfriend, he has illegitimate children, whatever the reason is, whatever it is, and you can't see the children because you abused them last time, or you used to drink, or whatever the reason is, whatever the reason may be, then make tawbah to Allah, repent to Allah, ask Allah to forgive you first and foremost. Allah, no human being, make a sincere repentance to Allah and ask Allah to rectify and to fix the wrongs that you have made. And then you go to the human being and apologize. Listen, I'm sorry. I'm a human just like you're human. I made a mistake. I was under this influence or whatever. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I'm better now. Inshallah, I've taken the necessary steps. I'm fixing my life. Would you allow me to see my children? Seeing my children is going to help me remain firm upon moving forward. It's going to help me remain firm upon positivity. As far as if it's not from your doing, it isn't a mistake or an error that you made, but someone is oppressing you and wronging you to see your children, then you got to be patient. You got to be patient. And you have to realize is that there are people who have a much better relationship with Allah. People who had a much greater relationship with Allah, who went through much worse than we are going through. And there are people who are far from Allah, have the worst, if not no relationship with Allah, and they have easier lives. And they are not tested and tried how we are tested and tried or put through trials. So you have to realize that it's a test. There are people who had their children killed in front of their eyes. Imagine how traumatizing that is. For you to get a phone call that your son is dead, he died in a car accident. Your son was shot in a random shooting, in a fire. Your son was rushed to the hospital, he had a heart attack. Your son was playing at school, in a freak accident, as they say. He fell from the jungle gym and he snapped his neck. He died instantly. It's traumatizing. Let alone your son was shot or stabbed to death. Your son was thrown off of a bridge. Your son was raped and murdered. Your daughter was raped and murdered. Let alone imagine you seeing it with your own eyes in front of you. An oppressive person killing your son, torturing your son, killing your daughter, killing all of your family members. Imagine how traumatizing that is. And there are many people who have experienced this. And these people who pray, who fast, who give zakah, who mention Allah abundantly. And they were put through these trials and tribulations. But that didn't cause them to leave off their religion. And it never caused them to cower and to complain. Rather, it only increased them and made them stronger believers. So no matter what you're going through, Yahi, you got to be patient. If it's something that happened in the past, fix it. Fix it. Inshallah ta'ala, move forward. If it's something that you're doing right now, stop it. Move forward. But you must remain patient. And bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, if you're doing the right thing, you've repented from doing the wrong thing, if you did the wrong thing, and you're patient, inshallah, Allah is going to make a way for you. Whether it's a day or a week or a year, Allah Azza wa Jal is going to be the one that's going to open the things up for you, and you will see your children, inshallah. So you just have to focus on yourself. Make sure you're doing that which is correct. And as a wise man once said, positive energy always corrects errors. Allah knows best. Next question. Fadl, Adam.
Is it allowed to cane your child?
Is it allowed to cane your child?
Cane.
Clear, crystal clear. In Islam, we have three types of rulings. We have rulings that tell us what we are to do, what we must do, what we should do. And then we have rulings that tell us what we are not allowed to do, what we cannot do, what we should not do. And then there are daily dealings in which there's nothing for or against in the rules of Islam. So therefore, In Islam, we are commanded to raise our children and to teach our children, to instruct our children. If we have all of the specifics, that's what we do. And if we don't have all of the specifics, then it goes back to your culture. As long as it doesn't go against the first or second type of rulings. Haram or wajib. It's haram to physically hit your children, to beat your children. It's obligatory to cane your children. So if the Quran says that you must cane your children, the Hadith says you must cane your children, you can't say, I'm not going to cane my child because it's not my culture. Right now, that's bad culture. Or that aspect of the culture is bad. Or the opposite. Or the opposite. The Quran and the Sunnah tells us not to hit our children, not to cane our children. And your culture is the exact opposite. You cane your child as soon as they can say, as soon as they can take those footsteps, you cane them. That also is now bad culture. If you don't have yay or nay, for or against, it goes back to your culture. However, it is understood in the principles of Islam. Islam is never for abuse. And obviously abuse is a relative word. And it's an extremely subjective idea and ideal. Be careful with that word, abuse. People call all types of things abuse or inhumane treatment. Those words are subjective, moral. This is immoral to do this. Alright? So in light of extremism, going beyond the boundaries, and also looking at caning your child as an alternative, as a last resort. If you can talk to your child, there's no need to cane them. If you can put them on punishment or take something away from them, there's no need to cane them. If you yourself have not taught your son the right way of doing it, there's no need to cane him. And if you do cane your son, how and where do you cane your son? Do you hit him with a really big stick? You break his bones? You leave bruises and scratches and marks on him? You break his skin? You do it in front of everyone? You do it publicly, etc. So all of those details are understood in light of the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah. So if we have nothing that says that you cannot do it, or nothing saying that you must do it, it goes back to your cultural discretion. My humble opinion and my humble advice is for you to be a successful father or a successful mother, is to have an assortment of ways of disciplining your child. It shouldn't always be verbal. It shouldn't always be physical. It shouldn't always be by grounding them. It shouldn't always be by saying this or doing this. And one of the greatest principles is the element of surprise. It is utterly terrifying when the child disobeys, breaks the rules, disrespects, and he doesn't know what's going to happen to him. It's scary. So just let's make an example of this. The child is clearly wrong and total violation, and you don't say anything. They come home, you don't say anything. Assalamu alaikum. Oh, wa alaikum salam. The food is on the table. You just sit there, you mind your business. You're flicking the remote, blah, 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 blah. And the son is like, what's going on? Clearly he got the phone call. Umi, she found out about it. My brothers and sisters, they know. Oh, alhamdulillah, how was school? Great. Alhamdulillah. Good night, have a good night. How is that child going to spend that night? They don't know what's going to happen to them. They don't know who knows what. They don't know anything. If you're a weak person, it's not necessarily going to work. But they have been physically disciplined before. Or they know that you're a strong person and you're not becoming angry, you're not becoming mad, you're not saying anything to them. They're going to be terrified. And they don't know, is my phone still on in the morning? Is my service still on? Did my father cut off the phone? Am I grounded? Am I suspended? He doesn't know. So you have to diversify and mix up your teachings as a parent. And it can't always be holler or beat and cane. Go to your room, your own punishment. It can't always be that. Keep them on edge. They don't know what you're going to do or say. And that element in itself is a tremendous technique of successful parenting. So I would say sometimes you may have to cane your child. Sometimes, quote unquote. That's a harsh word, cane. In America we say beat or hit. Cane is a British thing or European thing. Sometimes you may have to put them on punishment. Sometimes one of the worst punishments is taking away the electronics, the gadgets. We're going for a road trip, guys. 5 hours you're going to be in the car. Abdurrahman is going to have the iPad. Aisha is going to have the iPod Touch. Fatima is going to have this phone. And you're going to sit there for 5 hours with nothing to do. Or we're going to go to the candy store. Pick out whatever you want. There's no, you only have $10, spend it wisely. Pick out whatever you want. No, you stay here. You're not getting anything. You can cry and cry and cry till the river runs, we say. Cry until the Euphrates. You're not getting no candy. Your brothers and sisters, they're going to sit in front of you, open up your bags of candy, eat in front of him. How is it? Is it good? Does it taste good? This is what happens when you disrespect your teacher. This is what happens when you hit your little sister. This is what happens when you talk back to your mother. It can't just be one mode. That's the point. Wallahu a'lam. Fadlan akhi.
What would your advice be for those who have non-Muslim family members or even Muslim family members but they're not practicing the religion, to bring them to the religion without pushing them far away?
Advice. If you have non-Muslim family members, or Muslim family members who aren't that religious, they're not practicing, or they're doing things which are wrong, what would your advice? Whoever wants to lead a people should walk behind them. Whoever wants to lead a people should walk behind them. Stop and think about what that means. If you want to lead someone, don't walk in front of them. Walk behind them. In other words, don't tell them to get up for Salat al-Fajr every single day. They've heard you say that 1,000 times. You make sure that you're up for Fajr. You go outside, you make sure you lower your gaze. You make sure you do the right thing. You manifest the beauty of Islam and your character. So if a non-Muslim mother, of course you have to verbalize it. We're not saying it's some type of silent philosophy. No, you have to make da'wah. Call them to the deen. But you did that already. She didn't want to listen. Or led to a really, really bad argument. A really bad argument. So now make sure that you're the best son as possible. We cannot agree on Jesus is God, Son of God. We can't agree on that. We're not going to talk about that. But as a son, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to be the most obedient, respectful, benevolent son as possible. Speak with your actions. Lead with your actions. If the words don't work, then inshallah ta'ala, be the best that you can be. And many people who accept Islam, oftentimes they were wild in Jahiliyyah. Used to drink and chase girls, shoot guns, in and out of clubs. They were crazy. And a person comes home from jail, or comes home from this place, and the parents are like, who are you? What is this? You're respectful, you're quiet, you're humble, you're nice. You're not our son. You're a new person. So I'm the same son, mother. I'm the same son that you raised that came out of your womb. But Islam changed me. Islam told me not to do drugs, and not to drink, and not to disrespect. And that. Show them the character of Islam. Show them the beauty of Islam through your excellence. And the same applies to sports. How many people accepted Islam because of Muhammad Ali? How many people became a Muslim just because he was such a stellar boxer? The first thing he did when he knocked out George Foreman in the 8th round is he praised Allah. And he blamed his success on Allah. He attributed his victory, which was epic, to Allah. And the reporter was trying to ask him, how did you knock him out? Everyone was afraid of George Foreman. He was putting a dent in the boxing bag. He says, I told you I was going to knock this sucker out. I told you I was, and Allah allowed me to do it. So be excellent. Be the best that you can possibly be, and attribute it to what? Islam. This is why I'm bringing you this groceries. This is why I'm taking you here. This is why I'm being benevolent, because of my religion. And perhaps they'll get the message, wow, this religion changed my son. It's making my son into a whole different person. My son is the best son. Maybe I should inquire about his religion. And you'd be shocked. They may sit down, well, can you tell me that? What do Muslims believe about Jesus? You'd be shocked. What does Islam say about my sins being forgiven? They may ask you certain questions. But you have to have good akhlaq. You have to have good character. You have to be excellent. You have to lead it and then attach your success to what? Your religion. Another piece of advice is deal with people differently. What type of person is your father? Your father is a religious person. So sit down and talk about religion with him. This person isn't a religious person. You know, he has to talk about it in a different way. This person likes to drink. I'm going to give you some things in my religion about alcohol. In paradise, in my paradise, in our paradise, you have as much alcohol as you want to have. But this alcohol never gets you drunk. You don't curse, you don't slip, you don't go to the bathroom on yourself, no one stabs you or robs you, you don't wake up in a hotel room, you don't know what happened. There's no migraines and headaches. You don't think someone who loves alcohol is going to listen to that? Really? A whole river of wine. But you got to be a Muslim, uncle. You got to accept Islam. You got to make your shahada. And you got to avoid drinking in this life. And God will give you 10 times better in the hereafter. You have to attack people through their mode of life. People who like money, people who like sports, people who like this, address them. And this is included in Allah's statement, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Debate them in the best manner. This is included in hikmah and basira. You have to know who you're dealing with and who you're talking to. وَهَكَذَا. And you can't deal with everyone on the same level. And if you can't do it, that's fine. Put them in contact with someone who can. Or learn from them, inshallah ta'ala. And most importantly is be gentle, be kind, give them gifts. Don't be too harsh with them, too rash or too brash with them. Don't always be too judgmental with them. You go over the house, good afternoon, how you guys doing? They're doing something that you told them, I'm sitting here, I'm bothering, and that's it. And make sure, bid'nai ta'ala, is that you visit your family all of the time. That way when you're not there for Christmas, or you're not there for Thanksgiving, or you're not there for the Mawlid, they have no excuse to make. What can they possibly say? The first thing they want to say, our son has become a Wahhabi. He doesn't want to sit with the Prophet's birthday no more. We all did it. Our parents did it. Everyone back home did it. And now you're too good to come to the Mawlid party. But there's going to be an uncle or an auntie. Well, Brother Naveed, he just came and visited me last night. He brought me food. He took me out. He did this for me. He mowed my lawn. I'm not going to allow you to slander him. He doesn't agree with us in our way, in our tariqah or whatever. He's a Wahhabi, but he's a good son. He's a good nephew. So you can't say anything negative about him. And the same applies if you have Christian family members like we do. They don't talk about us on Thanksgiving and Christmas because we try our best to see them and to visit them when no one is there. Your grandmother, she realizes that you visit her, and Fulan cousin and Fulan aunt, they're in their worldly affairs. But they all come on Christmas. Or they all come on Thanksgiving. Or they all come on Mother's Day. But where are they at for the rest of the 360-something days out of the year? And that's the state of the Muslim. So therefore, make up for the times in which you can't sit with them. I'm not coming to your birthday party. You say to your little brother. But before that or after that, let's go out and get something to eat. Let's go here. Let's do this. Let's have some permissible fun. But if you're never around, you never visit, you never do anything for them, you never give them a gift, it's going to lead to their argument. We never ever see you. So therefore, you don't like your family, or you think you're better than us. They're going to say these things. But if you level the playing field, you're going to minimize what they can possibly say against you. So the most important piece of advice of dealing with a non-Muslim family member, or dealing with a sinful Muslim or an innovator, the brother said yesterday, is al-hikmah wal-aql. Wisdom and smarts. And everyone isn't born wise. Everyone isn't born smart. But you can do what? You can learn. You can learn it, inshallah, and you can practice it to the best of your ability. And Allah knows best.